To close.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It has been interesting, the discussion on the floor today. It's been interesting on both sides to hear the different aspects of why this bill is on the floor, why we're doing it, why we shouldn't be doing it, and many things. It's been interesting, the discussion, if you go from a strictly number of states category. What's been interesting is my colleagues across the aisle have talked about that there are now 38 states, but they failed to mention 5 states who rescinded their votes. 5 states would put you under 38. What is interesting to me in the Rules Committee the other night, the argument was that if they rescinded, it's not valid to rescind, but yet you can add states after the time limit is up. That's an interesting argument to make if you're actually looking at it from the perspective of if they rescinded within the time frame, but yet passed it after the time frame, that's okay. Then I actually heard one of my colleagues actually mention the fact that if we passed it in here today, that this would now become part of the process and along with the state of Virginia ratifying it, is now part of our Constitution. I'm sure this was just a euphoric discussion about how this would actually go about, but they was also forgetting the Senate is involved in this. It's amazing as we take down. I was really worried at one point, and I turned to on the discussion that there was it was said on multiple occasions that there was no protection in the Constitution for women. I was almost scared for a moment that the 14th Amendment had been repealed and I didn't know it. It is in there and still in there. Checked just a few minutes ago, it's safe. It is interesting to determine when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of the foremost architects in looking at this bill, even in the 70s coming forward, has said, if you want to do this, start over. Do it the proper way. As my chairman has said earlier, basically, a deadline should not get in the way of what we want. A deadline should not get in the way of what I want to have happen. That's becoming more and more of a concern in this body, that the rules and parliamentary procedures don't matter if it interferes with what we want. But at the end of the day, the question really becomes is why are we doing this? Why are we bringing this forth when there is absolutely no legal precedent, no constitutional precedent, no anything out there, and including some of the founders who actually started this whole process 40 plus years ago, who say this is not the way you do it. And the reason I know that is a concern is because some of those who've actually said this have been criticized in the media from the perspective of supporters of the ERA to say they have now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's comments have now killed the ERA or effectively done it. The reason is because she's speaking the truth about this issue. We disagree on most everything from a legal perspective, but on this one we happen to agree, and she's laid forth clearly what should happen here. But let me also say, and it's been talked about a great deal, so I think we just need to come to the real scenario on why this is happening. Not that we believe it'll actually happen for anybody here that believes that today is actually going to put it in part of the Constitution. That's not going to happen. So what is it? It's a political nod to the understanding of those who are speaking for this. As we have heard earlier, NARAL, Pro-Choice America, with ratification of the ERA, reinforced the constitutional right to abortion by clarifying sexes have equal rights, which would require judges to strike down anti-abortion laws. Also, NARAL, the ERA will support protecting women's right to abortion. With 5 anti-choice justices on the Supreme Court and Roe Wade on the chopping block is more important than ever. We codify women's bodily autonomy in our lives. Co-director of Reaper Action, abortion restrictions amount to sex discrimination because they single out people for unfair treatment basis of sex. The Senior Counsel, National Women's Law Center, the ERA would help create a basis for challenging abortion restrictions. This is what this is actually about. This is what the basis is needed because there has been a shifting in this country to understand that, in our opinion, in many opinion, that abortion is simply murder in the womb. It is not about life. It's interesting we're talking about the rights of women today, which again, this bill doesn't have anything to do with, but we're not concerned if the young women in the womb are even able to have a birthday. That's not concerned. So what would happen from these folks who are supporting your resolution today? Why do they want it? Because it gives a claim to start to finish unfettered abortion. So what does that mean? That means let's bring back partial birth abortion, in which if I have to remind anybody here That means the delivery of the child all the way to the moment the chin comes almost out and then actually crushing their skull. That's what that is. If that's a right we're protecting, I don't want any part of it. And neither does most Americans. They don't want a part of it. But that's one of those restrictions that will be laid back. It would also continue to allow unlimited abortions at any stage for any reason, including sex selection. It's interesting that we would talk about this today, the ERA, and use this, but yet a family could choose to abort a child because it's a male or a female. Let's be honest about this. But the bottom line for me, what really bothers me the most about when it's unlimited, unfettered access to abortion that this bill opens up, if it was to have passed, was one that hits close to home for me. You see, a European country recently stated that geneticists in Iceland said we've almost basically eradicated Down syndrome people. And I thought to myself for a second, that would be great. I mean, if we could actually remove Down syndrome and help those and cure that, that would be an amazing medical discovery for all people. Except there's one portion. You know how they've done it? Through genetic testing and killing the children in the womb. They don't even let them have a birthday. One Icelandic counselor counsels mothers as follows. This is your life. You have the right to choose how your life will look. She says, we don't look at abortion as murder. We look at it as a thing that we ended. You want to know why this is opened up, America? This is why. And for those of us like myself who have a disabled child, I do not want to hear that we're protecting disabled rights and other rights when we're not even allowing them to be born in certain arenas. Every day, I get a text on this phone. It's from my daughter. Jordan is 27 years old. She has spina bifida. She cannot walk and has never took a step. And I believe, probably given a medical condition, it will not happen this side of heaven. But she rolls and she smiles. She goes to work 3 days a week. She gets herself up early to put her clothes on and take her shower and get a bus that she calls, and she goes to work. The folks in Sweden, you know what they want to do? Kill her. Because she is not as valuable as a Down syndrome child is not as valuable. You want to open this Pandora's box of no abortion restrictions, then own what you're doing. But when Jordan texts me, she texts me, "Good morning, Daddy, I love you. How's your day?" 27 years ago, when we found out a week ago, 27 years ago, that Jordan was going to have spina bifida, we were a young couple, just happy that God gave us a child. And to find out that she had a disability only kept our hearts more in tune to what God had given. But my wife went to school the next week, and so she was telling the teacher about what was going on, and she said, "We're trying to figure out where we need to go to have Jordan helped when she's born and get some more medical attention." And this person looked at her and said, "You know you have choices, correct?" And my wife said, "Well, yes, there's Northside Hospital, there's Scottish Rite." She said, No, dear. You don't have to go through with this. That's your choice." In other words, as my wife looked at her and said, "You're talking about my baby." You see, when we go down this path, don't flower this bill up. Look at the ones who actually talk about it and say, this is an open door to abortion on demand with no restrictions, no government interference. In fact, government pay for it. But before you do that, America, as we look around, I want you to think of the picture on the new Gerber baby ad of the young person with Down syndrome who is now the face of Gerber baby food. If he was in Iceland, he would have been one of those that, as it said, "Oh, we ended." Think about my daughter, who, when we allow it out there for people who are struggling, and to get news that you have a child with disability, that is one of the most amazingly devastating things that you can hear, because you don't know what the future holds. But what you do know is life is a gift from God, and that it is my joy to take care of her. We had 30 major surgeries before she was 5 years old, 3 of which were 9 hours in length. Tell me her life doesn't matter. For someone who doesn't have the possibility of understanding it, and they're given a choice because they have a disability, and somebody tells them and gets to them and says, don't worry, disabilities are bad, just go ahead and end that life and go on with your life. This is what this opens up. So don't give me a bill that's going nowhere for the reasons that it's been given. The true reasons are found in your own supporters. The true reasons are found in what we know to be true. When you understand what this is about, then I will stand till I have no more breath in my body for the right of those who can't speak for themselves. It is amazing to me that it was said that what would I be saying to my daughter if I voted against this? I'd be saying to Jordan, as I will, Jordan, the 14th Amendment's still there. Protections in law are still there. And by the way, restrictions on abortion will not be done away with. And your life matters. So if you want a picture of this, picture Jordan. And I yield back.
Expired.